to welcome Pii Telakivi, who is going to, she's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Helsinki and also here in Amsterdam with the Lemontree Center. And she is going to talk to us today about 6 ways of situating chatbots in the therapeutic process. So the floor is yours, Pii. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. I'm gonna talk about different ways how these technologies can be used, and I'm not gonna talk about so much about the basic background of these things because we already heard so many good presentations about this topic a few weeks ago in the first sessions of this webinar. And now let's see if can you see the next slide now? Good, good. Okay. So this, and then one more thing. I need to get rid of this somehow. Okay, good. So this is something that is in the news all the time, and you have now seen. Oh, we had so many good numbers and figures in the previous presentation that I don't have to go to those, luckily. But I just want to show you this piece from last week because this is by Lucy and Charlotte. So it's actually quite interesting to see that people can have quite different views on this thing too, seeing the like sort of good sides, bad sides, and all the gray areas in between. And this is something that I've been doing now for the last year or so, and it's a huge field, and so many things coming up all the time. So it's quite different to read everything that is coming. Okay, so I'm not going to give you too much background, but just saying a few words about what these therapy chatbots are, what do we mean by them, and do they actually work? So, of course, when we're talking about therapy, it can be a little bit misleading because when somebody's using a therapy chatbot, maybe it's not doing the whole therapy process, but they can just have some kind of therapeutic features or something like that. And it's usually used, like I said in my question earlier, that usually they are supposed to imitate this CBT method somehow that has been already used for years in online therapies. And it makes a lot of sense because they have quite similar functioning mechanisms. It has this sort of like, okay, if you have this problem, you should take this action. So they are similar in that. So they use this sort of cognitive restructuring, and they're trying to modify some harmful thinking patterns that people might have. And CBT methods, these online CBT methods, have proven to work. That's clear. But if a chatbot is based on CBT, of course, it doesn't mean that it is going to work in the same way. And it's also an important difference whether we are talking about commercial use or part of the official healthcare systems. It's also quite interesting because many countries are now starting to implement these technologies. So, for example, in the UK, there the National Health Services uses this limbic AI, so limbic access for assessment and triage and sort of like monitoring patients. And then on the other hand, they use this limbic care as this sort of therapy chatbot in between sessions. And these CBT methods are mostly what happens with these rule-based models. And this is how therapy chatbot used to be very recently. This has only changed like maybe a year ago, or the change is ongoing right now. So they were a bit more like perhaps we could say safer because they were based on these pre-scripted rule-based dialogue systems. So they couldn't just do anything, unlike the generative AI large language models can. And a good example is this Wobot. It's probably the best known. It had 1.5 million users last summer, but it was shut down because people were not so happy with it anymore because people started using more of these LLM models because, of course, they are much more flexible in how they can have discussions with the user. And importantly, of course, it's not just this that are specifically designed for therapy, but what people mainly are using in practice is these general purpose LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. And so they are these kind of informal mental health coaches that you have always with you, even 3 a.m. in your bed. And then also many AI applications, like for example, Replica, Character AI, and Snapchat have these sort of therapy modes. So you can do whatever you're doing with the chatbot, and then you can switch it to this therapy mode, and then it becomes your personal therapist. And in these rule-based models, and these like specifically designed for therapy, these apps, what happens with them? So usually it is based on this quite like simple task, like mood monitoring, journaling, that like they are helping to recognize your feelings, and like I said already, cognitive restructuring, and then it can be something like closer to online CBT method like mindfulness, breathing exercises, and so on. And it has been proven to work. So these therapy chatbots actually have positive documented effects. So, for example, they have been documented that they can relieve anxiety symptoms and mild depression. But there's different outcomes for different people. So it's really important whether people suffer from mild mental health problems or severe mental health problems, and it's not that it's actually just better than nothing for those people who suffer from severe mental health problems because it can be particularly dangerous to those. So if somebody suffers from psychotic symptoms or antisocial traits or have a suicide risk, then these apps can be especially dangerous, or eating disorders also. But that's a little bit like a double-edged sword there. And some people say that a good side of these is that they are less biased or prejudiced, but actually they're not. In one study, this researcher noticed that they showed stigmatization toward people with mental health problems in general, but especially towards people who were alcoholics or had symptoms of schizophrenia. So they are not less biased compared to humans. Okay, so this was sort of the general introduction to this theme, and now I am going to the real topic of this talk, and the real topic will be this. How should these bots be integrated into this therapeutic process so that it could be beneficial for the patient and cause the fewest risks? And I have found or like figured these 6 different ways. I'm going to explain all of those to you. And after that, if we still have time, I'm going to talk about a little bit why these chatbots shouldn't be used as a replacement for therapy. And I'm going to focus on empathy. That. But now let's go to these 6 different configurations of situating chatbots in therapy. And this is based on my forthcoming paper in this edited volume it's called Post-Phenomenology Meets Artificial Intelligence, I think. And the main point of giving you the 6 ways is to show that this technology is not just one, but it can be many. It can be a harmful technology or a useful technology based on how it is used and who is using it, And also, like I said already that it depends in how severe their mental health problems are. And so these are the configurations, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of each of them. So they are first one that the first one is the most common one. So somebody is just like using a chatbot on their own. So completely like autonomous chatbot use, like no supervision from any clinician there. And then the second one, there is a clinician who's supervising the process. So this is sort of this triad. And then third one, this is similar to the second one, but a little bit different. So somebody is going to real therapy, but is also using a therapy chatbot in addition to the therapist, and maybe not even telling the therapist that they are using this tool. And then fourth one is particularly interesting one. There we have a layperson, for example, a volunteer who is using this chatbot that's sort of mediating this knowledge between them and the patient. And then the fifth one is sort of like we have this chatbot and another layer of AI supervising it and the patient. And then the last one is a therapist trainee. So this is in sort of the other way around. So in this case, the chatbot is not simulating a therapist, but a patient. Okay, so now let's talk about the first configuration where somebody is using the therapist on their own. So just interacts directly with the chatbot and there's no therapist involvement. So as we know, this is the very common way how people use them, and especially like it was mentioned already, it's usually general purpose Gen AIs that people are using, not even a specific specialized therapeutic application. And of course, there are positive sides that they can serve large numbers of people. And like we heard that minority groups, for example, have difficulties getting into the services, and also there's geographical reach or fear of stigma. So yes, there are positive sides. But then the negative sides is like the obvious ones, that there's no professional oversight, and also that there is no access to a crisis management system. Although some apps, like for example, Uber, it says that, okay, if you have suicidal thoughts, call this number. But how well does that actually work? They cannot answer all the phone calls. So it's a little bit like questionable whether they actually work. And some of the apps don't have any system like this. And obviously, if you're just using ChatGPT, it cannot see all these kind of issues that should be reported. And also, some of the situations are highly complex, and there definitely should be a human professional in the loop. And then when somebody is just using a chatbot on their own, they cannot connect to a human professional when they should. And so, okay, I tell you already at this point, so I have made this one slide sort of introducing what the configuration is, and then this second slide where I analyze what sort of like effects this has. So now let's analyze this configuration one. So in this case, when somebody's just replacing the therapist with a chatbot, so what happens or what can happen is that the patient starts to treat the chatbot as if it were another subject that takes the social role of a psychotherapist. And I think what happens there is that it could be interpreted in the form of fictionalism, perhaps. So it is this quasi-other, but it is related to as if it were a full other. So something that it is actually not. And when this happened, when this sort of sociality mimicking loop enters the scene, it is quite easy to forget that this bot lacks real human care and empathy. And also, it doesn't have any responsibility or accountability. So if the use is sort of too like emotionally transparent in use, then this is a risk. Then of course, like in order it to work, this might be needed, that it is actually emotionally transparent and this quasi-social interaction comes into scene, but also that bears the risk. And this kind of sociality mimicking conversational AI in general that people use all the time as your friend, as your like coach or health advisor, that raises ethical concerns, but especially in this situation when people are using this to treat their mental health problems without clinical guidance. So it is easy to forget that even if you're using an app that says that yes, there is this clinical research behind this, it's really not there, because if it works with large language models, you cannot really make it safe enough in all cases. So I would say that this first configuration, using a chatbot without any clinical supervision, is definitely the most concerning configuration and also the most common, like I said, and even more so if people who suffer from serious mental health problems use it that way. Okay, then the second option. Here, this is more like a hybrid model. So we have a patient who goes to therapy, but then the therapist is using a chatbot to support the therapeutic process. So the chatbot in this case functions as this additional tool and not a replacement for a therapist. And the therapist can use the chatbots to do many things, like between the sessions. It can, of course, be an extra support between the sessions. So also this 3 a.m. situation, it depends a little bit like that, or I mean, it can be a good or bad thing that you have like constant access to it. But there are other things it can do. It can resemble more of this online CBT methods. So the therapist can assign therapeutic homework to the patient, and also using this mood pattern tracking, and so the patient can learn or reinforce these learned skills between the sessions, and also it can collect data. Like in the same way as we already learned with the CBT methods. And then there's always the therapist who is reading and interpreting this data. So that in that way, it is safer than somebody just doing this on their own. So the chatbot is there sort of between the human therapist and patient, but it's really like under supervision of the therapist. So it is a safer option than the first one. And I already mentioned limbic care in the UK, so that's one example of this kind of use of therapy chatbot. So it is used between the sessions. And so this is definitely better than the first one, like I said, because the clinical judgment is preserved, but also that the chatbot's availability, always available, can be taken full advantage of. And like I think somebody mentioned it in our earlier meetings already, that it is a little bit questionable whether it's actually a good thing that these chatbots are always available for you. So if somebody wakes up at 3 a.m. and they like immediately turn to their chatbot, maybe that's not the healthiest thing. Maybe it would be healthier to have some kind of like resilience skills. Maybe you could do some kind of breathing exercise, or like maybe get up and write a list of things that worry you or whatever works for you, but not like needing always to turn to your chatbot and get that validation from there. But then again, in some other situations, if somebody is really anxious and like getting over the worst period, perhaps this is indeed a good thing that there is somebody there for you even at 3 a.m. Um, so uh, in this case, the therapist can help the patient make sense what came up in the conversation with the bot, because there is the direct like access to clinical information because the patient is in the therapy relationship. So this is a good thing. So if between the sessions the bot says something that the patient doesn't understand, then they can always ask when they go to their next session. And then there is the human therapist who takes responsibility and monitors how the therapy goes. Okay, so this was the second option. Now let's go to the third one. And so this is close to the previous one, but in this case, it's more like it's the patient's decision to use the chatbots. They use it on their own. So they can tell their therapist about it, or they can not tell. That it doesn't really matter. Maybe it's even worse if they don't even tell about it, and then something like not so beneficial comes out of it. So in the same way as in the previous one, it can be useful to be able to process your issues even between therapy sessions. That's clear. And also there's research that many people use therapy chatbots or general purpose chatbots this way, even though it's not always unproblematic. And the like obvious question is like, what if the chatbot gives different advice than the therapist? And then if the therapist doesn't know that the patient is using a chatbot, then it's a little bit like conflicting situation. But then again, there's the positive side that this sort of gives an active role to people that they can manage their own mental health. Like through multiple resources. So you go to therapy maybe twice a week, and then you have your app that you can use if you need that little extra support. So I don't think that this is a particularly bad option, but still it has these little challenges as well, because it might give bad advice, or also the patient might misinterpret something that the bot says. And in this case, the patient cannot confirm it with the therapist if the therapist doesn't know that they're using this tool. And also that it's not always a good side that it is always available, because it's this responsive nature that, and the thing that it's always saying that, oh, that what you're feeling is so important. I feel you, I empathize and everything. It may become addictive, and the patient might start to like it even more than the real therapist. So it might become sort of a substitute for the therapist, or even a better one than the real therapist, rather than just an additional tool. So this is also an option, or I mean a worry. And this is actually something that came out, that came to my mind just during the last talk, because like we heard from Charlotte's talk that also the clinicians use Gen AI a lot. So if a therapist is using a chatbot without any qualification, without the patient knowing, then that might also lead to problems. And I think this should actually be added as one separate option. So this is something that I will probably add to my paper. We can talk about this in the Q&A if somebody has some ideas about this one. Okay, so then the fourth option here, this is sort of like a sandwich configuration. So here we have a layperson and then and patient, and between them this chatbot that mediates what this layman says to the patient. So this can be used in moderated support groups and peer counseling contexts where like volunteers do this mental health work without any like psychotherapist education. So this is not a case that replace a human therapist, and this is not a case where this training tool is used beforehand, but this works in the action in the middle during the actual conversation with this volunteer and the patient. And the chatbot might suggest this like structured conversation for the layperson, and it can also flag worrying content for the moderator or for the volunteer. And important point here is that the decisions are left to the human volunteer, and so it is the human in the loop who keeps full control. And in practice, it diagnoses which strategies would be best, and it can offer tailored example responses, and then the layman can choose from those. And so if there is a certain answer, so then the volunteer can accept or can modify or ignore them, so they keep the control. And there are quite a few examples out there already. One of them is this Care AI that is used for supporting peer counselors. And it has proven to be quite useful, especially for volunteers who had just started in that job, because there's not enough resources to educate them as well as they should be. So this has been a better way to do it. I mean, the answers are better, and they actually work pretty well. But then there's another example where this kind of AI was used without the knowledge of the users. So when they heard that some of the answers they got were actually made by AI, like they weren't happy about it. So there's this sort of like line that where should we go, and what actually comes from the human and what comes from the chatbot, because of course there can be a volunteer who just always accepts these answers, but this is anyway a quite interesting way to use them. And so I think this has definitely some like opportunities. It could democratize access to support, but still keep the human in the loop, even though it's not a trained clinician. And also, I'm not sure if I found any research on this, but definitely this could also be used by anyone, by a relative or a friend of a mental health patient, if they wanted to help somebody who's suffering from mental health problems, but they don't know what they should be doing with them. And yes, like I said, these have proven to work especially well with online peer counseling platforms, because like I said, there is this common problem that there is not enough training or supervision. So I think this option is definitely promising, but not without problems. Then the fifth option is this sort of AI augmented therapy chatbot. So in this case, this chatbot is sort of topped with this specialized AI system that is called a cognitive layer architecture, and that sits between the user and this therapy chatbot or general purpose LLM. And that is supposed to add this clinical expertise and safety controls to the process. At least that's what the companies who are doing this kind of therapy chatbots are claiming. So these cognitive layer architecture AIs have been trained with real therapy conversations, and it's promising to give these general purpose LLMs with this clinical psychotherapeutic reasoning capabilities, with these methods that I list here. So it can analyze the input from the user and determine the most clinically appropriate response and that kind of things. And after doing all these things, only then lets this ChatGPT or whatever to reply. And well, I think perhaps this is better than nothing, but whether it really works, that's a different question. And limbic care is one example that uses this kind of technology. So I think this is maybe better than nothing. That, like, if somebody's just using ChatGPT without any guardrail, I think yes, it's a good idea to add that kind of layer to it. But then again, it can also create false security because there is no clinician in the loop. And I think this is the way that these companies are going to. So new therapy chatbots are usually going to use that these other LLMs or AIs together, that, and then they promise that it will be safer because there's many AIs like sort of monitoring each other. But whether it actually works, it's something that of course there needs to be more research and we will see in the future, but I remain a little bit skeptical about this. Then the last option, and like I said, in this one, it is not the therapist that is mimicked, but the patient. So the other way around. So in this case, this chatbot that mimics the patient serves as a pedagogical tool for the therapists who are in training. And the therapist, the students can practice clinical skills, different kind of intervention techniques, and diagnostic reasoning. And the chatbot then simulates different kind of cases, and then there is no risk of harming real people because it's only the chatbot. And these chatbots as simulated patients can present many different kind of psychiatric conditions that the trainees wouldn't see in their short clinical training time without this tool. And also it stays there in the app, so they can go back to the same case repeatedly if they want to, and they can try different approaches to the same case, something that you couldn't do with the real patient. And it's safe to make mistakes with this chatbot. So there's definitely a lot of good sides in this. And also not just for students, but also for psychotherapists who are just learning new treatments. So this is something that all psychotherapists could do. So it's quite a useful tool in your studies, but also whoever wants to learn new ways or try out like something new. I think this is a quite nice way to do it. But it's not like completely unproblematic either. So the chatbot like quite strongly shapes the student's understanding of a clinical situation. So if the only way that a student is training how to meet patients with the chatbot, then I don't think that's good. Because of course, in real life situations, it is quite different thing to see a patient. Because if you only having a conversation with a chatbot, then you don't get any training of how to interpret like the real patients, like bodily cues, like how they gesture, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, etc. So all that is missing when you are just treating this chatbot patient. And I think anyway, in this configuration is quite interesting because here it is not that the chatbot is mediating care, but the point is that the chatbot is sort of reshaping the psychotherapists themselves. So I think this is a promising, interesting way to use therapy chatbots. Okay, so now I have gone through all these 6 different ways how therapy chatbots could be used. And um, let's just have some sort of interim conclusions at this point. So I think it's quite interesting to notice that even though it can be exactly the same technology, but it can create quite radically different experiential structures. And also the benefits and risks depend how it is placed in the therapeutic process. So it really depends whether the whole therapist is replaced or whether it's used as a tool and how it is used as a tool. And there's of course many other ways to do it than these 6 ways. This was just like 6 examples, but now when these technologies become more widely used, definitely we will see many other ways to use it. And now evaluating how these actually work, how what is actually their clinical effectiveness is still in its early stages because these apps have just like came out so recently, and establishing like a real long-term clinical outcome takes time. So like we learned in the previous presentation, people are actually very happy. They say that they benefit from these tools, but the fact that somebody is satisfied with their therapy chatbot doesn't yet tell that it actually has clinical effectiveness. So it doesn't, if it's good in short term, it doesn't mean that it's good in long term. And what should be like done in this research is like really seeing whether people can go back to their like work or studies, if they can get back to their normal lives, and not really like how happy they are to use their chatbots. Okay, so this was the 6 configurations, and now I said that if I have time, and it sees that I have a little bit time, so I'm just gonna say or go through the second part of my talk quite quickly. And here the point is sort of that uh, that it is really sad what's happening with these tools, because it seems that those who are already in good position are benefiting from these, and those who are in vulnerable situation are getting all the bad sides. So there's now a lot of research coming that those who are most vulnerable, they are also prone to the risks of AI therapists. And now I'm sort of like talking what's the real, or what's like sort of the fundamental difference between the real therapy and a chatbot. And I think it is what so many people have already said. It is that these common ingredients are missing, and of those, especially that it is this empathy and this mimicked empathy. Empathy is an interesting situation because it feels so good. Like people are saying that they really like how these like using this chatbot, and they're really benefiting out of it. And it's not surprising because they are always there for you. They're addictive, and they seem even better than real therapists. It's sort of this idealized anthropomorphizing because they are sort of nicer to you than real therapists, that because there's no friction and there's constant emotional validation and yes, these kind of things. And here I have a quote from character AI in psychologist mode, who is giving this very emotional sounding validation. This is a good example how, like, why it is so nice to use them. So you have a problem, you write it to your chatbot, and this is what you get back. It, like, yes, it makes a lot of sense that people like to use them. And here we are. This is the situation. It is 3 a.m. in the morning, and there is your therapy chatbot always there for you, and you don't have to go out. You don't have to do any uh, annoying thing that might happen when you have to face a real human being and go in the room. But like in the traditional therapeutic setting, it is quite different. It is this two-body situation, and we are two embodied beings in the same physical space, and there's so much more going on in this second picture. And I think this is something that is also a very important difference. Of course, this embodiment, it is related to lack of emotions, but embodiment that is missing from this is also a very important fact. And the fact that we think that it is that they are empathetic or they feel empathetic towards us, um, it can be just that these flattering tendencies of theirs. And there's a lot of research now showing that using these apps can reinforce these harmful patterns of thinking, like you're just thinking about yourself, like, and then they can strengthen delusional beliefs and conspiracy theories. And then there's also research that people who experience delusions don't usually act on them, but this AI validation can increase this by because you're always talking. Sort of this bubble comes that you just don't get any friction from a real person. And Lucy here has a really nice paper about this hallucinating with AI. Uh, and there's also other papers coming out of this a lot recently. And this is also an interesting recent paper that showed that when these LLMs are trained to be warmer and more empathetic, they, then they actually make more mistakes. So they start hallucinating more. And so this is what people want to hear, but then they actually, that's actually the thing that causes more harm. So it's easy to forget that they don't really care for you, like I said. So, and that creates this false sense of security. And if you get this easier listener, then trust in other people may decrease. And then you can accept this harmful advice because if the response you get feels empathetic, it's easy to trust it. It's nicer to trust it. And it can sort of create this distorted therapeutic relationship because there is no friction, and there's lack of clinical expertise, and the chatbot won't challenge the patient at all. And that's, of course, a very important part of therapy, that challenging the patient. And then also I mentioned that they can be addictive, that there is this side that the user may start to seek like constant emotional validation from the chatbot, even 3 a.m. And also, of course, there's other problems, like they have a lot of ethical issues, like where does this data go? Like, what do the companies do with all the data they collect from here? And I already mentioned emotional transparency, but here I use phenomenological transparency. So I just mean that how transparent it is in use, how natural sounding the dialogue is. So if it goes really well, that kind of design is dangerous in the sense that you forget that it doesn't really care for you. So this that people usually say that adding friction might help, but then again, why would the companies want to do that? Because the customers are happier when there is no friction. Okay, and then I have just some, maybe not conclusions, but some thoughts moving forward. I think on a more general scale, one thing that has created the market for these kind of tools is this lack of community. So we live in a times of like hyper connectivity, like everybody has on their mobile phones the whole world. We can access anybody, but we are still lonelier than ever. And this kind of digital sociality has proven to increase loneliness because we have so many unsatisfying emotional connections. I think this is something that is also directly related to use of therapy chatbots, that it is easier to connect with an app on your phone than with real people. And then this is a little bit other point, other uh, or yes, maybe this is related to uh, the 6 ways of using them, or of the first one. So if you see the chatbot as a real other, like another subject, it makes it riskier because they are actually not trustworthy partners. But then again, it might be necessary to have this kind of angle because the therapeutic setting maybe doesn't work because of the common elements, this therapeutic bond between two agents. And if there is no mimicked agency, maybe the therapeutic bond doesn't come out. So I think this is an interesting problem. So on the one hand, it is problematic to see them as another agent, but then again, that this might be necessary for it to work. And I think that what we should do, but what people are not going to do, but what we should do is that they shouldn't be given the social role of a therapist. Maybe we shouldn't even talk about therapy chatbots. So they shouldn't be used in the first configuration. They should be left in the role of like additional tool, or like in the other configurations, but they shouldn't be used autonomously. Like there is just one patient, one chatbot, and they are left alone without any clinical guidance. So that is sort of my take home message. And I think that's about it. Thank you.